Hi, my name is Ryan. I run New Growth Strategies and I help businesses work more efficiently. So if you are running a business and you serve other businesses and you have less than 20 employees and you feel like your work could be more efficient, then this is for you. Now, what I'm going to show you is my whole outreach pipeline. So for context, I work with other businesses on their client acquisition strategies, or at least that's one of the facets of my services. And it's particularly building a system around client acquisition, and outreach is, for me, the most important part of that. So what I'm hoping to accomplish with this video is give you an idea of what's under the hood, what's working for me, and how I do it, particularly without spending a ton of money on crazy software. Apollo and Clay and Hunter, for example, is a popular stack for discovery, enrichment, verification. And so, and the thing is it costs an enormous amount of money, and a lot of times the data is not even that good. Especially with Apollo, the data gets cached and it gets stale. And a lot of the businesses that I reach out to don't get updated in those databases so often. So they turn out to actually be counterproductive solutions for me. And so what I've done is essentially built my entire discovery, enrichment, and outreach pipeline natively within Claude Code, assembling a ton of different agents and sub-agents, as well as a local knowledge base with Obsidian, and gave it the tools to do all the deep research it needs to, while also knowing everything about me, my business, even to little writing styles, like how, for example, what we'll get into later is how it writes the second follow-up email versus the first email versus a DM on LinkedIn, for example. And before I dive into it, let me just preface with, I'm a big believer in keeping outreach human. In the last couple of years, with AI having such a profound effect on sales and marketing, I think one of the pitfalls is that we end up losing out on human connection when we're trying to build business relationships. And now for my business, it's maybe a little different because I create more custom bespoke solutions for businesses, and long-term relationships are therefore really important for me, and also building trust. And I can't outsource that to AI, which is fine with me. And so one of my core philosophies is I will outsource as much as I can to AI and automation, but sacrificing the quality of human connection is not something that I believe is worth outsourcing. So before I dive into the specs of everything, a little bit about my outreach strategy, because this is kind of where it all starts, right? If you don't have a really solid idea of what your ideal outcome is going to be, then this is going to be incredibly difficult and really expensive. What I do is outreach services for trade associations who do not have lean staff, who do not have big teams. So for those of you who don't know, a trade association is an organization. It's almost always a not-for-profit organization that represents all the organizations within an industry. So for example, let's say you have like roofing contractors, companies that install roofing on houses. You have all the roofing contractors in a country or a state in the US. There might be a couple thousand, there might be 10,000 like the state of California. And they're all competing against each other for business, but they also have shared collective interest, right? They all need insurance, they all need maybe capital access. They need all these things. A lot of them need a lot of the same things, but they don't necessarily have the individual resources to get that thing really, really, really well. So, for example, you have all the roofing contractors in the state of where I'm from is Washington, and there's about 5,000 of them, and they all need liability insurance. So instead of everybody, bidding for their own insurance, it makes more economical sense for everybody to pool their resources together and collectively bargain with one company for a more attractive rate. The insurance company wins because they get a disproportionate amount of the business for roofing contractors in the state of Washington. So they make more money, and the roofing contractors win because they're getting access to good insurance at a lower rate, at a better discount. And the one who brokers this is the trade association in the middle. What makes them a nonprofit is they're not redistributing their access or their capital to their members or their staff, right? So people don't get paid out bonuses or anything like that. If it's a well-managed organization, then it's actively promoting the collective interest of the association that it represents. Okay? So I do outreach services for trade associations with less than 15 full-time employees in the US as my primary market, and the Netherlands as my secondary market because I live in the Netherlands. So proximity makes it a little bit easier. The people that I reach out to, my ICP is the ideal client profile. For maybe some additional context, when I say outreach services, it's literally just helping the trade association reach out to potential members, sponsors, exhibitors for their events, and other strategic partnerships. So what I do is help with the outreach to all of these companies on behalf of trade associations. And so if we're going to take that information and put it into a who is my ideal prospect, then that boils down to a trade association in the US with no dedicated membership management role, 2 to 5 full-time staff, at least one large annual event with less than 20% market penetration with member dues between $300 and $950. If I just sent the same email to every single trade association, I might get a couple bites, but it's not going to be as efficient as just sending, 50 emails to all of the trade associations that I can find that fit this exactly. In fact, when I demoed this the first time, I researched 12 trade associations just within my hobbies. Out of those 12, 3 of them replied back to me positively, and those became pipeline deals. So that costs me way less time, way less resources than, say, reaching out to 1,000 that just relatively fit the trade association with less than 15 full-time employees in the US profile, right? And so there's more natural flow to the conversation. But then it becomes a question of how do you find trade associations or any organization really that fits a very specific situation? And this is where I have constructed a discovery, enrichment, and outreach engine to really support this. And the way that I'm running it is what I'll show you is everything's run within Claude Code in these little command prompt terminal sessions, right? I have Claude Code Max, so I'm running several of these at a time. They're each doing different things, and they're all connected to different tools within my organization, right? So like I have, for example, my main inbox, and then I also have another inbox dedicated to outreach. So there's like my main, my second main, and then my outreach inbox, for example. It's also connected to Notion. So for example, like I've got all these playbooks for like a LinkedIn DM. It's not doing my DMing for me, but it's if I say, help me draft out a direct message to someone on LinkedIn, like it's got a playbook for that. It's got a playbook for writing the first email, writing the first follow-up, writing the second follow-up, and or in this case, a DM specifically for trade associations on LinkedIn, right? So, and this is constantly building on itself. So this is the second brain for all of my AI agents, and they're all running within the same vault. All 3 of these sessions are connected to the same knowledge base, and they're also connected to the same tools so that I can outsource some things like super quick that I don't necessarily need to be a part of. Like if I needed to like go through my last 50 emails and give me a breakdown as to what's going on, it does that way faster than I would be able to do it on my own. And so the way that I've constructed the outreach bit is, like I said, everything falls within either discovery, enrichment, or copywriting. So if I were to go do that myself, it would probably take a little bit, but what I could do is outsource that Google searching to a discovery team. And I say team because there are several agents within this pipeline, okay? So when I say go discover 5 new trade associations, it's got directions for a delegator and separate instructions for a research agent. So here's what that looks like specifically. If I go to my org discovery instructions, this is going to be that delegator agent, and it's giving instructions to each research agent. It's got its own set of instructions. It's even got its own model assigned to it, right? And these instructions are just pointing it towards these other instructions for the actual research agent, which is using a different model. This is using a very low cost, almost brainless model that's got web search and web fetch enabled. This is literally just an AI agent that's got Google searching enabled. That's really it. And it's got some very specific criteria for my ICP. In this case, I said less than or equal to 10, but if I wanted to retune this, then and say ideally less than 15, or ideally less than 10, but less than 15, up to 15 is acceptable, then we've got this very explicitly mentioned. So that's part of the filtering mechanism, right? Etc. There's review, like if it's already managed by an association management company, then I'll go and manually review it. It's getting its own instructions for doing the actual research. So it can run like 5 of these at a time, for example. Like it can run, the one delegator will run a batch of 5 or 10 or however many new organizations that we need. And then after all that's done, there's another agent that will go evaluate the results of that and then update instructions or update memory, whatever it needs to do so that the next time it can improve results. And then it becomes a self-improving cycle. That's what recursive learning is here in this. That same rule is implemented into this whole pipeline, right? So let's see this in practice. So this is an actual Claude Code session. What I'm going to do is run this end to end. So we need to discover some new associations and then we need to enrich them and then we're going to reach out to them. So I'm running everything just out of spreadsheets right now. I don't have enough moving parts. Like I don't have enough potential prospects to manage where a CRM, like a full CRM system, is justified. Like I run everything just out of Google Sheets and Notion right now, and it works fine for me. So a quick peek into what's going on here. So this is basically my outreach pipeline, right? These are all trade associations that I've discovered. So this would be like the Alliance for Coffee Excellence or Solar Washington's, all the solar installers in Washington State, for example. I've got when I've sent them an email, when I've sent the person a connection request on LinkedIn, follow-ups, 1 and 2, and other information about their company and what I found within their company. So, for example, everyone these days now gets like a fitness test. So there are some that are like relatively good fit, some that are like really good fit, and some that are just like not a good fit at all. And so for these, like I filter them out so they didn't get any sort of message. For the ones that are maybes, they'll be flagged for manual review and I'll go and review them myself manually. This is how I catch edge cases. And because this has become like a self-learning cycle, the more iterations this does, the better it gets. So now that we're in the 200 plus outreaches for this list, it's gotten incredibly accurate with its own evaluations. It also mentions certain triggers. So like this one, for example, consolidated events to 2 signature conferences. Like that's good to know. For like maybe they were running like a bunch of sporadic events throughout the year, but now they've got 2 large conferences. So maybe their focus is now growing their exhibitor and sponsorship pipeline. That's something I can very directly refer to in my emails, right? That's a great signal. New executive directors, only been there for 6 months. Hiring a director of membership and member services, right? See, these are the sort of signals that I look for that help strengthen the opportunity, right? Like the timing of my outreach then becomes much more favorable because these are people that are actually experiencing the problem that I solve, right? And and this is how I know, because this is just from a Google search or going through their website, for example. And like I said, everything's tracked. All my outreaches, the dates, other like LinkedIn website stuff, like that's all being tracked. I have obfuscated the emails as to protect the privacy of the people that I'm cold emailing for when this goes on the internet. On trade association discovery batch of 5. And I'm just going to hold this here just so you can see what this looks like in real time. So let's watch it. So there goes the agent that we looked at earlier. Again, that is this org discovery agent. So if I bring it back down, it's preparing to do everything, but very soon what we're going to see are several local agents. You'll see them down here in a blue text. But it's spawning now 5 parallel org discovery researcher sub-agents. That's great. We're going to see those pop up here very briefly. So another tool that I want to mention is the scraping tools that it gets. So in addition to having web search, this is literally just a Google search going on right here, but it's also going through all the websites and scraping like their leadership page or their staff page or their contact page. We're looking for publicly available information first. And the way to do that, once things are found in the web search itself, then you just go and scrape the website. And like I said, because we've been building knowledge for quite some time, I've given it instructions to specifically look for contact pages and staff pages and things like that, just so we're not wasting time. Like if a website is like hundreds of pages long, then we don't necessarily need all 100 pages getting scraped, right? Because a lot of that's not going to be directly practical for our use. A lot of what I could find is just in like the top level pages. A lot of what I need to find is just in the top level pages. Usually like their about pages or their PR and news pages, I can usually find something good there. So that's really what it's targeting. So again, lots of Google searches. This is the sort of thing that I would do if I were to do this manually. And all I've done is just replicated that process of it running manual discovery, right? And that's how this was all created. I did all this manually for a very long time, got my process really modular and really, really refined, and then built a system around that. And over time was able to just outsource more and more and more of the handmade repeatable work. So here it is starting to fill in sheets with 5 new trade associations. So we've got the Fermentation Association, Kombucha Brewers International, International Live Events, Exhibitor Appointed Contractor Association, that's cool, and the International Association for Continuing Education and Training. So we're getting really niche, really specific in the research that for the kombucha, or for the Fermentation Association, I should say, there's 400 members across kombucha, cheese, chocolate, pickles, functional beverages. That's interesting. It's a growing category. Members are hiring for ops and marketing. That's cool. So 400 members is perhaps not a lot. That's a good sign for me. That means I can be more help for an association like this. This one is super large. 7,000 members is no small organization. And these are event production companies of all sizes. Post-pandemic recovery. Member growth campaigns are active, so that's also really good for me. So this is what I'm talking about. This is the kind of research that, like I said, I would do manually. These are all the signals that I would look for. 7,000 is perhaps a little bit bigger, or quite a bit bigger than what I would ideally go for. But no, I'd say this is all looking very much up to par with what I would come up with myself. So here are the final results from this batch of 5. No public emails and a lot of like info at emails, which is fine to start. But what I would probably do is if this isn't picked up in the next phase, if we don't get direct contact emails for these association directors in the next phase, then I'll go and try to deep dive myself manually if I can find something. And if not, we'll just reach out to the general contact email. That's also fine too. As a worst case scenario, something's better than nothing. No public email, buying signal, new VP, growth phase, 0 duplicates. Great. Proceed to... So now we're going into an enrichment pipeline. And this is where things get really interesting. So what I mean by enrichment is this is like our deep research and fitness testing. So if discovery is like building a list of all the companies and all the people within those companies, if the discovery phase is focused on finding the organizations to reach out to, then enrichment is learning everything that I can about their company and their specific situation, figuring out who to contact and how to contact them, and then using all that information to evaluate if this is the right organization to reach out to. If so, then we'll proceed. And if not, why? And then, as always, that pipeline will evaluate itself with another external agent, take notes, note any challenges it ran into or anything that was missed, for example, and hopefully update this pipeline for better instructions for the next time. Here's a read on its whole process, right? You can pause the video and read this, but I'm going to move on. The TFA, so because it's going to be in here. Now this is interesting. We've got the Fermentation Association has a YouTube channel, a Facebook page, and 12,000 followers on Instagram, but we don't have a website for it. So I'm going to dive into this a little bit later. I'll just say to my agent, I don't see a website for the TFA. Either flag for proceed with the other 4. So now we are going to copywriting. So like I said earlier, it's got playbooks for all of these steps, right? So for trade associations to write the first outreach email, I gave it some reference emails. These are the 3 that actually got responses. Yeah, these are just the notes that it will refer to when it goes through. What we've also trimmed back, other rules, GDPR rules, things like that, right? Also, if it's like an association management company, how do we reach out to them? Because that's completely different. Yeah. No jargon and no M dashes. It's usually pretty good about that. But let's take a look at the agency where it's at. So you can see it's referring to its copywriter email 1 instructions in real time. Let's see if we can open up the email for that a little bit more. All right, computer bugged out a little bit, but we're gonna continue the job here. So here's what it's gonna do. It's going to spawn some background agents, which is what we'll see down here. We'll see 4 local agents. Basically what's happening there is, think of it as like a whole session like this, but it's being spawned in the background with its own instructions, its own prompt, and its own context independent of this. And when it's all done with its task of, in this case, writing a concept first email, then it will report back its findings and tell me to go check on everything before I send it. All right, our email agent is back. All 4 have different structures, no overlap. Great. All 4 email 1 drafts are in your Gmail. Fantastic. Have a broken MCP connection. This happens every once in a while. That's okay, that's pretty fixable. Looks like it put them in the wrong one. Put them in the wrong inbox. Happens. Happens very, very, very occasionally. And ironically, happened in this video. So it's going to go find them. Then it's going to move them. Then it's going to delete them from the old one. And then we should see them in the drafts folder in my actual outreach inbox. Fantastic. So now they should be here. This never happens. All right, now we should have all 4 drafts in the outreach inbox. There they are. This is what the final output looks like. And what I would do at this point is just go through these one at a time. I'm still checking and refining the copy and the research itself, so I will take a few minutes to go deep dive the kombucha brewers on my own while we train everything to improve. It's just not there yet. That's fine. It's part of the process, right? I did have to help it along because it put it in the wrong inbox twice. So one of the things that I like to do at the end of every one of these runs is run this self-correction loop skill, and it'll identify its own problems and then go back and write into things like the memory or other instructions. The copyright agent used the wrong Gmail MCP for outreach draft twice. So it knows its own issue, and then it's going to go back into the memory files and give it maybe perhaps more specific instructions for where to route outreach drafts for trade associations. That should go to one inbox and not the other. And the nice thing about running this in this terminal is while all that's running, I didn't do this in this session because I wanted to demonstrate what all this looks like end to end, but while all this is running end to end, like I could just say run full TA pipeline discovery enrichment. There should be 5 new drafts. So if anything gets excluded, fill the pipeline until there's 5 drafts. Okay. And because I have it bypassing permissions, it's just going to start working on its own. And then I can go to another session and say, what is for something else? Like, where are we at with the deal pipeline? And then in this, I could say, how is the website performing on GSC and Google Analytics? So I can run all of these at the same time. So now I'm outsourcing the automatable parts of my outreach while I'm doing some catching up on where my pipeline is at or where my business is at for the day-to-day, while I'm also auditing the current SEO performance of my website, for example. So my point is this takes multitasking to a whole new level, which is great. And as you can see, it's got all these tools connected with even my bookkeeping stuff. So these 2 sessions are going quite well, and we're getting a little bit of a connection error, which is unfortunate, but happens. All right, so for example, my AI assistant, my personal assistant's coming back with all the active deals, any flags for to-dos and stuff like that. It's basically pulling all the emails from all my inboxes, giving me a general report. I've also got some events on the calendar, right? We've got some tasks that are now overdue. Went through my bookkeeping, there's no outstanding invoices, nothing overdue there. N8N server's looking good. I'm able to do all this while the rest of these tasks are working. That's what is really amazing about building these kind of systems. So I know I covered a little bit more than just my outreach pipeline, but the point I'm trying to make here is that while my outreach pipeline is running in the background and it's doing its thing, and all I have to do now is just quality control the drafts, everything else is also running on the back end, and it's constantly improving itself, and I'm constantly learning from it. So if this is something that you could benefit from in your business or association, then I would love to have a chat about it. Use the links in the description to find a time to chat with me on my website or add me on LinkedIn, and look forward to hearing from you about it. That's going to be it for today. Ciao.